There comes a moment, quiet and devastatingly clear, when you understand that everything you've been trying to control was never really yours to hold. You spent your life tightening your grip on success, on people, on the image of who you thought you should be. And yet, the tighter you held, the more everything slipped through your fingers. This is the paradox Alan Watts spoke of so often, that the more we try to command life, the less of it we actually experience. True power, he said, is not found in the clenched fist, but in the open hand that allows things to flow through freely. Imagine a river. The harder you try to dam its course, the more resistance you face, the more pressure builds until it eventually bursts through. But if you step back, if you let it flow, you see that its natural rhythm carries everything where it belongs. Watts believed that life is this river, our desperate attempt to master it, to define it, to shape it, to force it into submission, is what separates us from the very peace we're trying to create. We forget that control is not power. It's fear disguised as order. Most of us were raised to chase stability, to build walls against uncertainty, to believe that freedom is something we achieve once everything is under control. Yet Watts showed us the opposite, that life's beauty unfolds precisely when control is lost. The unknown isn't the enemy, it's the dance partner. And when you stop fighting the rhythm, when you stop fearing the fall, you finally begin to move in harmony with the music of existence. There's a strange relief in realizing that control was never real. Every plan, every expectation, every illusion of certainty, all of it has always been at the mercy of forces beyond your reach. But in that moment of surrender, something extraordinary happens. The anxiety fades. The walls dissolve. You stop being a manager of outcomes and become a witness of life's unfolding perfection. It is here that Watts invites us to rest, not in control, but in trust. Because power was never about bending reality to your will. It was about understanding that reality itself was never separate from you. The ocean doesn't fight its waves, it is the waves. And when you finally see that you, too, are part of that vast movement, control no longer matters. You begin to live, not as the one trying to steer the storm, but as the storm itself, wild, unbounded, and free. Control. It's a word that defines how most people live their lives. We seek it in our relationships, our careers, our futures, even in our emotions. Yet, as Alan Watts so eloquently revealed, this constant striving for control is the very thing that keeps us from truly living. We confuse control with strength, when in truth, it's just another form of fear. Fear that life might not unfold the way we demand it to. The tragedy is that in our obsession with steering the course, we forget to experience the journey. We spend our days trying to direct the waves, not realizing we are already the ocean. Watts often described life as something to be danced with, not dominated. He would say, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. But modern society has taught us to resist the rhythm, to distrust the natural flow. We've built systems, routines, and identities designed to give us a false sense of permanence. Yet, beneath the surface, everything is in motion. Every breath, every thought, every heartbeat is a reminder that change is not the enemy, but the essence of existence. The harder we fight it, the more disconnected we become from life itself. Imagine trying to hold your breath forever just because breathing out feels uncertain. It sounds absurd, but that's what we do when we try to control life. We cling to the inhale, success, stability, comfort, and we fear the exhale, loss, uncertainty, transformation. But life cannot exist without both. Watts taught that the inhale and the exhale are one continuous act, just as joy and sorrow, gain and loss, rise and fall are inseparable. The attempt to isolate only one half of the experience destroys the whole. The beauty of surrender, as Watts described, is that it's not about giving up. It's about waking up. It's the realization that you were never in charge to begin with. You don't control the beating of your heart or the growth of your hair, yet both happen flawlessly. You don't command the sunrise, yet it returns every morning without fail. When you see this clearly, you begin to understand life has always been happening through you. not because of you. Control was an illusion you inherited, not a truth you discovered. And when this truth begins to sink in, something shifts deep inside. The tension softens. The endless striving begins to dissolve. You start to see the grace hidden in the chaos, the wisdom in the uncertainty. You start to live as what's intended, not as a controller of the world, but as a conscious participant in its unfolding mystery. The question is no longer, how do I control life? But rather, how can I let life express itself through me? Alan Watts often spoke of the futility of separating ourselves from the universe, as if we were passengers observing it from the outside. He reminded us that the idea of a self standing apart from life is an illusion born of language and thought. We say, I control my life, as though there were a you distinct from life itself. But Watts insisted that this separation is imaginary. Just as a wave cannot exist without the ocean, you cannot exist without the whole. You are not in the world. You are the world, momentarily expressing itself as you. The mind, however, resists this truth. It clings to identity, to the comforting notion that it commands reality. It says, I must achieve, I must plan, I must decide, believing that willpower is the engine of existence. But what's revealed that willpower is often just resistance in disguise. When you drop the constant need to direct every outcome, you begin to see that the universe has been moving perfectly well without your intervention. The seasons change, the stars move, the tides rise and fall, all without a single command. You were never the conductor. You were always part of the symphony. There's a subtle kind of arrogance in believing we can master life. It's not intentional, but it's deeply ingrained. We are taught to fight against uncertainty, to believe that happiness depends on control. Yet what's exposed the irony? Control is the source of anxiety, not the cure. When you try to grip the river, it becomes turbulent. But when you let it flow, it becomes calm and clear. True peace is not the absence of chaos. It's the ability to see the perfection within it. It's realizing that life doesn't need fixing. It only needs your presence. This is why Watts urged people to live effortlessly, not in laziness or apathy, but in alignment with the natural flow. He often referenced the Chinese concept of Wu Wei, action through non-action. It means moving in harmony with the current rather than against it. The willow tree bends in the storm while the rigid oak breaks. Likewise, those who flow with life endure, while those who fight it exhaust themselves. The paradox is clear. When you stop trying to control, you gain the very peace you were chasing. And so, the lesson deepens, not through force, but through understanding. The moment you realize that control was never power, you begin to see that power was always presence. It was in the stillness between thoughts, in the silence behind the noise, in the acceptance that nothing needed to be different for you to be whole. In that realization, life no longer feels like a battle to win. It feels like a mystery to be lived. Alan Watts believed that much of human suffering comes from our refusal to trust the process of life. We live as though we're dangling over a cliff, terrified to let go, not realizing that beneath us there is no drop, only the ocean we've always belonged to. We mistake our resistance for safety, when in fact, it is the very source of our pain. Watts would often say, the only way to make sense of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. Yet most of us cling to the edge, paralyzed by the illusion of control, afraid to surrender to the movement that is already carrying us forward. Consider how much energy is spent trying to force outcomes, forcing relationships to last, careers to unfold exactly as planned, or circumstances to bend to our will. Each attempt becomes a battle against the inevitable tides of existence. Watts taught that this struggle is not strength, it is blindness. Because the moment we fight what is, we lose connection with what could be. By trying to dominate life, we miss its poetry. The art of living, he said, is not found in resistance, but in resonance, in learning to vibrate with the rhythm of what is unfolding, not against it. It is in this surrender that true intelligence arises. Not the intelligence of calculation or strategy, but the quiet knowing that life itself is wiser than the mind. The same force that turns seeds into forests and clouds into storms also breathes through you. When you stop trying to control it, it begins to move effortlessly. You act, but without anxiety. You decide, but without doubt. You love, but without fear of loss. What's often compared this state to music? You don't dance to get to the end of the song. You dance because the movement is the joy itself. Life, too, is not a problem to be solved, but a song to be heard. In modern times, people worship control as if it were the ultimate achievement of consciousness. We automate, calculate, and measure everything, trying to master the unpredictable. Yet, in doing so, we've lost touch with the raw experience of being alive. Watts warned that our obsession with order creates a world where spontaneity becomes frightening and uncertainty feels like failure. But uncertainty is not chaos. It is possibility. It is the space in which new things are born. Control tries to freeze the moment, but life was never meant to be frozen. It was meant to flow. When you realize this deeply, a profound peace emerges. You no longer need to know what comes next. The present moment becomes enough. You begin to see that power was never in your ability to dictate outcomes. It was in your ability to stay awake as life unfolds. You become like a leaf floating on a vast river, not lost, but guided. And in that effortless surrender, you discover the secret Watts spoke of, that what you truly are has never needed control to exist. Watts once said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself." This simple idea dismantles the illusion of control entirely. If life is expressing itself through you, then who is there to control what happens? You are not the director of the play. You are part of the performance. Every joy, every sorrow, every turn in your path is not happening to you, but as you. This realization changes everything. It frees you from the exhausting role of the controller and returns you to the effortless role of the participant. When you accept this, life becomes astonishingly vivid. The colors seem richer, the sounds more alive, and even pain carries a strange kind of beauty. Because now, you're not resisting the moment. You're seeing it for what it is, a fleeting expression of infinity. Watts reminded us that the universe is not a machine to be managed. It is a dance to be experienced. And in every movement, no matter how uncertain or unpredictable, there is perfection. You were never meant to control the rhythm. You were meant to move with it. The tragedy, Watts noted, is that we spend years trying to separate ourselves from this dance. We think of ourselves as thinkers, planners, doers, always separate from the act of being. But when we stop chasing after control, we rediscover the forgotten art of trust. Not blind faith, but a deep, felt confidence that the same intelligence that grows trees and births galaxies knows exactly what it's doing with your life. The control you seek has already been woven into the fabric of existence. You don't need to manage it. You only need to awaken to it. In that awakening, the mind begins to quiet. The questions that once haunted you. Am I doing the right thing? What if I fail? What if everything falls apart? Start to dissolve. Watts would say that these fears are symptoms of believing you stand apart from the world. But when you see that you are the world, failure and success lose their meaning. You stop chasing outcomes and start living experiences. And life, in its raw form, becomes profoundly enough. So, when control fades, what remains is not weakness, it is freedom. The freedom to be uncertain, to be human, to let life surprise you. Watts taught that the greatest joy comes not from mastering existence, but from participating in it fully, without resistance. To live this way is to finally understand what he meant when he said, "The meaning of life is just to be alive," because that, in itself, is everything. There's a deep paradox in the human heart that Alan Watts understood better than most. The more we try to secure life, the more fragile it becomes. We build our routines, our identities, our beliefs, all to feel safe within a world that refuses to be predictable. But life, Watts reminded us, is not meant to be safe. It's meant to be real. To live fully is to stand unguarded before the mystery, to face each moment without armor, to let both pain and beauty pass through you like the wind through the trees. Control may promise stability, but in truth, it robs you of vitality. It replaces wonder with worry, spontaneity with fear. What's compared this obsession with control to trying to hold water in your hands? The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. The only way to truly hold it is to let it rest gently on your open palms. Life is the same. When you loosen your grip, you don't lose it. You experience it more deeply. This is the art of surrender, the courage to let things be as they are, without demanding that they fit into the structure of your expectations. It is a quiet rebellion against the mind's endless craving for dominance. Yet surrender does not mean passivity. Watts was clear about this distinction. He taught that real freedom doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing without fear. It's the difference between acting from trust and acting from control. When your actions flow from alignment with life, rather than resistance to it, they carry a strange grace. Things seem to happen naturally, without force, without struggle. You begin to feel as though life is working with you, not against you. This is the effortless effort Watts often spoke of, a state where movement arises spontaneously, like music playing itself through you. To live like this is to remember your original nature, the part of you that existed before you learned to be afraid. Watts believed that children, in their pure innocence, understand this instinctively. They don't control play, they become play. They don't analyze laughter, they're laughter. But as we grow older, we are taught to trade spontaneity for certainty. We become actors in our own performance, pretending to be in control while secretly longing to let go. It's only when we return to that childlike trust that we find our way back to reality. And so, the journey becomes one of unlearning. Unlearning the illusion that control equals strength. Unlearning the fear that chaos equals danger. Unlearning the belief that you must earn peace by managing life. Watts invites us to drop the pretense, to see that power was never about mastery. It was about connection. When you stop trying to manipulate the current and instead let it carry you, life reveals its hidden harmony. And in that harmony, you discover something far greater than control. You discover belonging. Alan Watts often spoke about the anxiety of modern man, the deep, restless tension that comes from believing we are separate from the flow of existence. He said that our suffering arises not from what happens, but from our insistence that it should be different. We live like swimmers thrashing in the water, afraid of sinking, not realizing that if we simply stopped struggling, we would float. It's not the river that drowns us, it's our resistance to it. Control is nothing more than the panic of a mind that cannot trust the water. Watts' insight into this was profound. He explained that the ego, the sense of I trying to control everything, is a useful illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. It helps us navigate the world, but it isn't who we truly are. When we identify with it, we believe we are isolated fragments struggling against a vast universe. But when we see through it, we realize we are the universe expressing itself as this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. The need for control dissolves, because there is no longer anyone separate to control anything. You are not the observer. You are the dance itself. In this awareness, something extraordinary happens. Fear begins to lose its grip. The future no longer feels like an enemy, because you're no longer trying to own it. You start living from a deeper intelligence, one that doesn't depend on plans, strategies, or certainty. This intelligence is intuitive, fluid, and deeply wise. Watts often said that life is like surfing. You can't control the wave, but you can learn to ride it. And in that balance between surrender and skill lies the art of being alive. But here's where the real transformation occurs. When you let go of control, you don't become powerless, you become present. Control is always about the future, about managing what hasn't happened yet. Presence, however, is about now, about meeting life as it is. Watts emphasized that the present moment is all there has ever been, yet it's the one thing we constantly overlook in our pursuit of control. The irony is that the power we've been chasing was always here, waiting in the stillness we were too busy to notice. When you finally understand this, life stops feeling like a problem to solve. It becomes an unfolding miracle. The fear of uncertainty turns into fascination. The need for control turns into trust. You begin to see what Watts saw so clearly, That power was never something to grasp, but something to realize. It was never in your hands. It was in your awareness. And when awareness awakens, the illusion of control fades like a shadow at sunrise. Alan Watts often described life as a cosmic game, an intricate play of opposites where every attempt to escape uncertainty only deepens our entanglement with it. He said that the universe hides from itself through us, creating the illusion of separation so that the game can be experienced. And what a game it is. We chase control as if it were the key to happiness, but it's only the veil that hides joy itself. When we finally see through it, when we recognize that control is just a mask fear wears, the game changes. Suddenly, you stop fighting the current and begin to laugh with it. You see that the storm you were trying to calm was never outside you. It was within you all along. What's used to say that life is not a journey toward some distant goal, but a dance happening right now. We keep thinking happiness is waiting just around the corner. After the next promotion, after the next relationship, after the next victory. But those are mirages created by the mind's desire to control. The truth is that there's nowhere to arrive. There's only this, the living moment, shimmering with mystery. The mind can't grasp that because the mind wants security, but reality offers only flow. The more you try to control the dance, the more mechanical your steps become. The more you let go, the more beautifully you move. This realization can be unsettling at first. The ego doesn't surrender easily. It thrives on control, on the illusion of ownership. It says, if I let go, I'll lose everything. But what's flipped that idea on its head? He said that it's only when you let go that you truly have everything, because then nothing can be taken from you. Possession is temporary, but connection is eternal. Control demands that life obey you. Connection allows you to be one with life itself. In that state, even chaos feels sacred, because you see the intelligence pulsing within it. When you start living this way, you begin to notice a profound stillness beneath all movement. What's often described it as the silence between the notes that makes the music possible. Control makes us fixate on the notes, the actions, the plans, the results, while missing the silence that gives them meaning. But when you attune yourself to that silence, you discover a different kind of power. A power that doesn't dominate but harmonizes. A power that doesn't force but flows. It's the power of alignment. The power of being so attuned to life that every breath, every choice, feels effortless. And that is where freedom is born. Not in the mastery of life, but in the intimacy with it. Freedom is not the ability to make everything happen your way. It's the realization that your way and life's way were never separate. Watts invited us to step into that truth, to live not as controllers, but as co-creators, not as victims of uncertainty, but as participants in its beauty. When you stop chasing control, you begin to experience what he called the joy of being wrong, the thrill of not knowing, the ecstasy of simply being. And that, he said, is the essence of living. There's a sacred moment that comes after you've exhausted every attempt to control, after every plan has failed, and every illusion has crumbled. It's the quiet after the storm, the silence that feels like surrender, but is actually awakening. This is the moment Watts spoke of when he said, when you let go of trying to control everything, you begin to realize that you are never separate from it. It's a strange and beautiful peace, the kind that doesn't come from winning or achieving, but from finally seeing clearly. You were never steering the river. You were the river, flowing all along. As this realization deepens, the world begins to look different. The small things, light dancing through a window, laughter echoing in a cafe, the breath of wind on your skin, become profoundly alive. You start to understand what's meant by the phrase, this is it. Not someday, not somewhere else. This moment, right here, is the miracle. You don't need to control it because it doesn't belong to you. You belong to it. And when that understanding settles in your heart, life stops being something you manage. It becomes something you marvel at. The irony is that true control arises only when control is abandoned. When you are no longer ruled by fear, your actions become more natural, more precise, more compassionate. Watts explained that when you stop trying to control life, life begins to move through you with intelligence. You speak at the right time. You act at the right moment. You love without calculation. It's not that you've gained control. It's that you've aligned with the deeper rhythm that has always guided you. You've become the conductor, not by force, but by listening to the music. This is why Watts often laughed when people asked him for the secret to peace. There isn't one, he'd say, because peace is what happens when you stop looking for it. The moment you cease striving, the moment you stop clinging, peace rushes in like air into a vacuum. Control blocks the flow. Surrender opens the gates. And in that openness, everything you were trying to create through force begins to arise naturally. Clarity, harmony, joy. Life begins to take care of itself, as it always has. And perhaps that is the final truth Alan Watts wanted us to remember. That power was never about control, but about connection. Never about domination, but about understanding. When you let go, you don't lose yourself. You return to yourself. You stop being the actor and remember you were the play all along. And in that remembrance, you finally awaken to the beautiful absurdity of it all. This grand, mysterious dance of existence where control was never power and surrender was never defeat, but the purest form of freedom. In the end, all of life's striving, every effort to master, to predict, to hold, melts into a single realization. You were never meant to control the ocean, only to float within its tide. Every fear, every failure, every moment of chaos was never proof of weakness, but proof of your belonging. Alan Watts taught that freedom begins when the illusion of control ends. When you finally stop demanding that the world obey you, you begin to feel its pulse within you. You start to see that the power you were chasing was never lost. It was simply disguised as surrender. The beauty of letting go is that it doesn't end in emptiness. It opens into vastness. The moment you release your grip, you realize that life was never trying to take anything from you. It was trying to give you everything. The laughter of a stranger, the sound of rain, the stillness after heartbreak. All of it becomes sacred when you stop labeling it as gain or loss. Watts believed that awakening is not a grand event, but a quiet noticing, a gentle, when you finally see that the river was never against you. It was carrying you home all along. And so, the pursuit of control becomes the practice of trust. You stop fighting the storm and start learning its rhythm. You stop fearing the unknown and begin to marvel at its design. This is the essence of power, the kind that doesn't seek to command, but to understand. Watts often reminded his listeners that the meaning of life was not hidden somewhere distant or profound. It was right here, in the act of being aware, in the realization that you and the universe are one continuous movement, endlessly creating and dissolving, dancing and resting. As you breathe in this truth, the need to conquer fades, replaced by something infinitely more profound, peace. You stop asking, what happens next? And start saying, this is enough. Because it is. Every moment, no matter how uncertain, holds the entire cosmos within it. To live without control is not to drift aimlessly. It is to be guided by the same intelligence that spins galaxies and beats your heart. The moment you trust that, you finally feel at home in existence. And if this message resonated with you, stay with it. Let it echo. Let it shape how you see the next sunrise, the next conversation, the next quiet pause in your day. If you found value in this reflection, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your thoughts below. Not as an act of support alone, but as part of this unfolding conversation about what it truly means to live freely. Because maybe, just maybe, the moment we stop trying to control life is the very moment we begin to live it.